Thanks, Elena. We are joined by a very special guest on Cannabis Coast to Coast News this week. His name is Reginald Reefer. Now, I watched and listened to this guy for a long time because I read cannabis.net, and Kurt Dalton, who's the founder of that and kind of is the grand poobah of cannabis.net, was my co-host on a podcast we did back in 2019. Okay. And this gentleman is a writer, and he wrote an article this week that I was so excited about. I reached out to my friend Kurt. He introduced me to Reggie. I can call you Reggie.
Yeah,
Yeah,
100%.
Reggie Reefer. Okay. And the article he wrote was 2026, the year of the great cannabis battles. So, Reggie, first of all, you did a great job. You touched on so many perfect points about the state of the industry right now, as far as I'm concerned. So, I
Yeah.
congratulate you on that.
Thank
But if you could look at this, and it
you.
says shaping up to be the battleground for the cannabis plant in America. How did you come up with this idea? And my goodness, it's quite a long piece, too. How many words, if you don't
I
mind?
don't know. It's like close to 2,000, maybe
2,000
around
words.
about there.
Wow.
Usually they are around about there. I try to keep them short, but it
Oh,
just
no.
they
You're
get
talking to a talk show host who knows how to fill time and
yeah,
is reprimanded for talking too much.
yeah,
So I get it.
yeah. It
Uh,
happens.
but congratulations. I think the biggest thing that I took away from this article was it really is a great example of how discombobulated the industry is right now, because you've
Yeah,
got the legacy market that's been around for over 100 years. You've got the hemp CBD market that was deemed federally legal by our Congress of the United States back with the Farm Bill in 2018, where they opened up Pandora's box and they created this cottage industry that's underregulated, unregulated. And then, of course, now you have the people who are trying to do it the right way, the legal licensed group. And unfortunately, they're fighting against each other.
yeah,
There really has to be one plant. And I'm sure you know who Steve D'Angelo is, and
yeah,
I'm sure you know
100%.
who Andrew is, and you know that they're starting the One Plant Alliance, which I
Yeah.
think is tremendous. So, what do you think is the biggest reason right now for this discombobulation in the industry?
Well, as you mentioned, factions were created, and there was no national cohesiveness throughout all of the different, factions. So
Right.
you got the states, markets, they don't care about the other states as much unless it's a legalized state next to a non-legalized state, because that creates kind of like a minor, black market, gray market area. Makes it a little bit hard.
Hmm.
Then you've got the hemp dudes. They obviously was like, wow, we just scored the big one, so let's start selling this, psychoactive stuff. And to be fair, I smoked all of that, and it's not as psychoactive as just pure straight up flower. But it also proved to us that, legalizing cannabis nationally won't destroy the fabric of society, right? So that was on the other side that you could see, like, okay, you know what, they sold this at gas stations, and we didn't have people go crazy.
Right.
um
But we did get it into the hands of kids because of the stupidity of our Congress that didn't
yes,
put an age gate on it, because
yes,
that's the simplest thing to have controlled that. And also, let's also mention the fact that the FDA, after that farm bill, was supposed to be the regulatory body about how
yeah.
to take CBD and put it into different products, and they did nothing about
And that's the problem, right? The problem here is we're treating cannabis and hemp as two separate things.
it.
So
Right.
that's where I see the one plant philosophy coming in. Hey, it's not two things; it's the same plant. And under this banner, we should make rules for this whole plant. Um, and then also, really establish the fact that the whole Controlled Substance Act needs to be renegotiated. That thing is just it's one of the worst policies that has ever been birthed in the history of the United States. And it's, for me at least, and I'm not an American. I believe I was born an American outside of America, because I've always had the ideals, and I even sound American since I was a kid. My family sounds like British people. I always spoke like, they're like, you sound like an American, and I'm like, yeah, well, Then high school, American high schools, and so forth. So,
Okay.
but the bottom line is that the Controlled Substance Act by itself is one of the greatest infringements on life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It is like, hey, you don't have a right over your body. You don't
Right.
have a right over your mind.
Right.
We tell you what you can and cannot put into your body and mind. And if you don't, we'll threaten either with jail, force, or violence until we get our way. And so cannabis is this faction splintered thing that's really a Frankenstein of different systems that then so prohibitionists always go and say, oh, well, that's great because look, it's failing over here and it's failing over there. And it's like, well, yeah, but we never legalized cannabis ever, like fully.
Hmm.
We never created the rules. We never created these things. So you're poking at these holes within a system that doesn't exist, and you're saying that's the evidence that it doesn't work. When in reality, it's like, no, when we implement it correctly and when we put in the safety gates and when we put in these mechanisms, it'll certainly work. It'll certainly get to I mean, obviously not without any problems. Yes, there's going to be people who consume too much. Yes, there's going to be people who's going to drive while they're high. But you create laws around that. That kind of behavior becomes the law, not the plant itself, right? That's my take, but pretty much on the reason why there's no cohesive movement within the thing, because it's Game of Thrones, really.
Right. And you're preaching to the choir because I've been preaching about rewriting the Controlled Substances Act pretty much for as long as I've had a microphone in front of me and talking, because we know more about those controlled substances now than we've ever known.
Yeah,
And of course, our leaders are still trying to understand the power of the cannabis plant and the medicinal qualities of the plant. And of
yeah,
course, a few weeks ago, we actually had, I lived to see this, two things. Richard Nixon still haunting me to this day. He haunted me as a child. Okay.
yeah,
He created the Controlled Substances Act, and the fact that he's still in my life in some capacity really bothers me. But I've
yeah,
nothing I can do about that other than to yap about it. And of course, now we have a president who is doing things his way or the
yeah,
highway.
yeah,
And whether you agree or disagree with his tactics or who he is or the type of person he is, I lived to see the day when I heard a president of the United States basically understand that this plant has medicinal qualities. And if
yeah,
he wants to move it off Schedule 1 to Schedule 3, by all means, you could start that process. You can
yeah,
bully your staff. You could bully your Republican Party. You can do whatever you want because you are who you are. And I'm not going to change that guy.
yeah.
And I'm also
I
going
don't
to
think anybody
respect him.
can.
What's
Yeah.
that?
I don't think anybody can change that guy.
Correct. He wakes
Yeah,
up and he just decides he wants to
yeah,
take over Greenland. I mean,
yeah,
again,
yeah,
it's just bizarre, but it makes for great copy. It
yeah.
really does. I
It's
mean, it
that's
keeps
one thing
people.
that Trump has always been great at. Like,
That's right. Well, he's
people
a
talk.
reality TV
Yeah,
guy.
exactly.
I want a couple things. We definitely are aligned on a lot of things, which is great. One of the things when you're in your column or your write, or I don't
Yeah.
even what the hell we call it. Is it an article?
Yeah, I would say it's like a column. Like
It's a
I've
column.
always thought of it as like this is like my weekly thing, and I just like distill what I feel about the
Right.
ether of the
And you could go
industry.
on to cannabis.net and see all of your work too. I mean,
Yeah,
that's the beautiful
yeah,
thing, what Kurt's done there. This is not business as usual. This is a coordinated, well-funded assault on cannabis freedom. That
yeah,
was the first thing in bold in your editorial comment, blog, whatever the heck you want to
yeah,
call it. And then I love the fact that you give credit to Kyle Yeager at Marijuana Moment. I think
yeah,
Tom Angel does a great job. I read it every single day. I think
yeah.
anybody in
I'm
cannabis.
very inspired by their work, and that's why I have a ethical principle to always call out wherever I get information from. I have to like point back to the sources. So yeah,
and and he points out 2026 and you take it to a whole new level, which is great. um, we need every advocate, every patient, every consumer, every rational human being to show up and fight. And then of course we go into the coordinated rollback, how we got here. But
yeah,
the important thing in that sentence is we have to educate people
yeah,
and explain to them how it works. And another thing that I'm going to give the president credit for is when Howard Kessler helped produce the Commonwealth Project's public service announcement about the benefits of CBD, explaining what the endocannabinoid
yeah,
system is in a highly produced video. It came out at 10:45 on Sunday night, September 29th. I will never forget it because I had just produced a whole show and I
yeah.
said, this is my lead. I can't let this go.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I completely, basically took did an intro and an outro and explained that this is the first public service announcement that was pro
yeah,
cannabis in my lifetime, and I
yeah,
lived to see it. And then here we are months later, and he had Howard right there next to him on his left.
yeah,
And now we all find out that he lives in Mar-a-Lago. He's a
yeah,
billionaire. He's a philanthropist, and he
yeah,
beat cancer through cannabis.
yeah, yeah.
And that's what triggered this whole thing. And again, it's only been triggered because if you leave anything up to our government, they're going to screw it up. Okay.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Yeah,
That
no,
was
no.
pretty much the premise of my
Yeah,
commentary about this PSA. I said,
yeah.
let's hope it actually does some good. And now, of course, it's gone to the DOJ, and Pam Bondi has a million different things on her plate right now. So she can't get to this. And now, of course,
Yeah, then there's also like the whole Schedule 3 is for me has been a nightmare since the beginning. I've
yep,
seen it happen. I was like, this is like first of all, there's a lot of legal pushback that can be happening in that category, which will then send any type of cannabis reform into this legal limbo for the next few years. And that pretty much is what I thought was the when Biden suggested it, that was my initial gut feeling.
yep,
I was like, okay, this is what they're trying to do.
yep,
Farmers losing money. They
yep.
need to angle this. So get into Schedule 3. We're gonna give this advocates. We acknowledge, yes, it's medicinal. We know. It's like, oh shit, no, really? The patents that you guys have that didn't tell us that it's medicinal. No,
You
that's
know your
cool.
history. Yep,
Yeah, those things we can just forget about that. But at the end of the day, that's what they wanted to do. They wanted to push it there. My dream, my utopian dream
okay,
is that Congress makes move on cannabis and deschedules it completely, just removes it from that toxic bill
right,
and say, listen, we can put it with the ATF, we can put it with alcohol and
yep,
firearms and those things. We can
right,
create
yep,
this legal place there
yep,
and then work it from there because cannabis is not like any other crop. Like
right,
it's not like corn. It's
right.
not like tomatoes because you can get high
That's
from
right,
cannabis, right?
right,
Uh, so it's also not like opiates because you can make plastic out of cannabis. So, we've got all this different functionality. You can't treat it like any other substance. It
right,
has to be given its own special framework to exist.
right.
Industrial, medicinal, and recreational.
hmm
That's
And
like,
there is a bill in Congress in the House right now, the States Act 2.0 revisited, that actually, if you've read this thing, makes the most sense of anything I've read, except for the social equity, social justice.
as
Uh,
they always screw that up with that, right?
yeah,
They can't just
they
they
can't
can't just
just get it right the first time.
they
That's
can't
right.
just like remove all that and be like, okay, we'll create state
Oh
taxes or
no, we don't want to
whatever.
let people out of jail. They've been in jail for years for possession crimes. We
Yeah,
don't want to leave. I'm like, come on,
yeah,
people.
come on.
It's
Yeah,
2026. I mean,
yeah,
it's just amazing to me. We still live like we're in the 18th century in many,
yeah,
many ways. We're celebrating 250 years of
yeah,
living with this Constitution, which is a pretty remarkable thing unto itself.
yeah,
But you're right about the legalese part of this because
yeah,
people always ask me, so Jimmy, what should I be investing in cannabis? It's going to be a
yeah,
huge thing. And I go, a good law firm,
yeah. Yeah.
right?
There's
Because
a
they're going
lot
to
of
make
money
money.
in cannabis law. Yeah,
That's right. And on either side of this, they're just going to, it is the way it's going to work.
yeah,
So um, I have to run this by you. And people who have watched me and talk about this, I get a lot of pushback when I bring this up because I am a conspiracy theorist.
yeah,
Okay. I spent a couple of days in Washington, D.C. at the NCIA's lobby days in May this past year and
yeah,
went in on some meetings with lobbyists. Okay. Aaron Smith was the executive director of the NCIA. He and I have known each other for 7, 8 years since I've been doing this. And and I learned about that the government is really good at delaying making a decision.
yes, yes, yes. That's
And that's why they have so many freaking layers in the government. Now, here's my conspiracy theory. You and I can probably both agree that the government's trying to do the best job possible to make it as difficult as possible for anybody in this industry to survive.
yeah,
The
yeah,
margins are razor thin now, and they created a legal definition of hemp that they've realized they screwed up
Yeah.
Okay. And now they've even admitted that they screwed it up. So what do? Well, we're just going to ban it all. We're just going to ban the federal, all the hemp is going to be. Well, that's stupid because you've already established a $32 billion industry
Yeah.
alongside a $28 billion industry that you have started because you're allowing adult use legalization to happen in the
Yeah.
states.
Yeah, well, it just basically proved all of their fears to be non-true, right? And so it's like, oh man, okay, well, we can't really sustain the prohibition narrative anymore because
Right.
people get to buy their weed at gas stations. It's out of the bag.
And that was one of the first things they screwed up is they didn't age gate it. What they didn't understand is, oh, if we just limit the THC to 0.3% in dry weight, no one's going to be able to get high from that.
Yeah.
Oops.
Oops.
Oops. I
Yeah,
guess they can. Again, it's the same plan. I'll never forget there's an advocate. He's passed away in Massachusetts this past year or two, Bill Downing. And the night that the Farm Bill passed, I happened to be at an event with him and a woman named Dr. Uma Dhanabalan, who wrote the book called The Exit Drug. She's probably
uh-huh.
one of the most
Yeah,
intelligent, you know who she is.
yeah, yeah,
And I told them both, I said, guys, do you know that the Farm Bill just passed? And they go, oh my God, really? And I go, yeah, and Bill says, they legalized the plant? And I said, well, they've got this 0.3% hemp thing. He goes, people are going to figure out how to get high from
yeah,
0.3%. That,
yeah,
I mean, it's like, duh, right?
yeah. Never underestimate the creativity of stoners, right?
Or humans. It's human
Just,
behavior.
yeah,
We're
it's like,
all frail. We're all enticed by vices. Come on.
yeah,
We all have stresses. We put our clothes on one leg at a time. At
yeah,
some point, we're going to understand that our differences should bind us, not
yeah.
separate us.
Yeah, but also just, mature as a society. I think it's ridiculous to say that, oh no, well, you can't get high this way, but it's totally fine to get high this other way. That's no, yeah, that's okay. We know that it kills. We know that things happen, but don't get high this way. This other way that you want to get high with, that's dangerous and you'll go insane.
And again,
Like, yeah.
I think I saw a movie in 1937 about that called Reefer Madness, right?
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
that's where Reggie Reefer got born from.
oh, is that's the urgent? I love that.
Yeah,
Okay, that's
yeah,
cool. That all right, you pass.
yeah,
Here's and of course you have the repeal efforts in here, the federal hemp ban, Schedule 3 is corporate capture, the propaganda blitz, restrictive regulations, and then it's like we thought public opinion had shifted permanently with 70% of Americans recognizing that it has medicinal qualities and should be legalized.
yeah, yeah.
We were wrong
Yep,
because again,
yep.
the almighty dollar corrupts the human behavior.
Yes. And narratives, they like from about 2 years ago, there was a massive shift in narratives. Like I said, I've been covering this since about 2012. And doing the history since 12,000 years ago and up to where
Hmm.
we're at.
Yep.
And from when I started reporting, everything was sure there was the propaganda stuff that you could see, but there was a lot of studies, a lot of hype, a lot of new discoveries that happened up until about 2022. And then suddenly it's like, oh, now there's this new scare, and your heart might explode if you smoke a joint, and all of these type of things like, oh, now it causes dementia and cancer. It's far worse for you if you smoke weed. And it's like none of this is true.
Right.
And one of the things that I do a lot is take studies and then I follow the money. I'm like, okay, who wrote this thing?
Right.
Who sponsored this? And then I'm like, oh, who sponsored? Oh, okay, it's Pfizer. Gotcha. Okay, this is Pfizer. This is Johnson and Johnson. This is all these guys that are losing the tunes of billions of dollars every year that their legalization's happening. They don't want it legal. So what are they doing? They create these studies. They seed it into the journals,
Yep.
and then the news picks it up. Headlines start appearing, and then the next thing you know, like 4 or 5 months down the line, you got a politician citing some bullshit study that never happened,
Yep.
and that's how they do it. So
And now they have money.
they have money, and it's and
And
there's
Sam is dangerous. Smart approach to
yes. No, no,
America
no,
is
100%.
dangerous.
He's been my arch nemesis. Yeah, I think he doesn't even know who I am. Like, but I've been writing against him for like
Oh,
a long time. Like, but the point is they are trying to do something and they're scared of something. I don't know what it is, but this effort and this change is almost like if they don't rein it in now, something's going to happen. There might be a movement, a social movement or something that's going to spark up, I don't know.
Right.
But there's definitely a higher velocity behind the anti-cannabis rhetoric. That is 100%.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you know the history of it. You know the origins of prohibition, and you know the funding that backed Harry Anslinger's cause to vilify the plant and
Yeah.
why he did it. Race, the depth
Yeah.
of racism in this country, it rears its ugly head on a regular basis to this day. Okay.
Yes.
And, the Civil War was fought 2 centuries ago at this point. Can
Yeah.
we move on, please? All right.
Yeah.
Please. Anyway, can we get and one of the interesting things that I've noticed about the people of color, as they say, black people in this
Yeah.
country, some of the athletes, and I'm a sports guy, so everything goes back to sports with
Yeah.
me. Some of the really um, well-funded athletes, some of the
Yeah.
best, recognize the differences in class between the races and are
Yeah.
trying to put more effort, education, and support so they can help out that cause
Yeah.
because we have too many black people in jail for possession. They were
Yeah.
they were profiled, and I didn't even know. I thought the prison system was all federal.
Mhm.
Duh, it's a private business. No
Yeah.
wonder they have quotas to put. They have to fill them up. So they arrested black people. They
Yeah.
profiled them on the corners in cities. It's disgusting to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Disgusting to me that this happened in my lifetime. This has been
Yeah.
going on. Okay, and
Well,
because
that's all due to the Controlled Substance Act. It all
I,
goes back to that
well,
because
Mr.
it's
Nixon,
literally, yeah.
I'm sure you've heard his quote.
Yeah.
Those
Yeah.
long-haired hippies, and
Yeah. Yeah. And
yeah,
yeah, the black people, yeah.
well, yeah, he
Yeah.
used another term. Let's
I
just
know
say
a little
it
bit more
wasn't the N
harsh.
word, but it was a
Yes.
nasty word that began with a
Yes.
D, and it had to do
Yes.
with the light or dark. Okay, let's leave
Yeah.
it at that.
Yeah.
I hate even thinking about it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
here's what I learned, and I want to know if you have actually. I checked this out, so I know it's true.
Yeah.
Harry Anslinger married Andrew Mellon's niece, the
I did not
Secretary
know
of
that.
Treasury's niece, and that's how he got his job appointed by Herbert Hoover.
Wow. Okay. Now
And
I
now,
didn't go that deep into Anslinger's
well, it was
genealogy.
told,
Yeah.
it was a venture capital group out of Britain that
Wow.
told me this. I said, I'm going to have to do some fact checking on this.
Yeah. No,
And it was,
that's
and I might have
interesting.
screwed it up. It might have been Herbert Hoover's niece. I don't
Yeah.
care. It was
Yeah.
nepotism, is what it was.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
he got that job, and he kept that job from 1930 to 1962.
Yeah.
And any government study that came out during that 34-year
It
period,
should all be
whatever,
thrown out. All of it should be thrown out, or it should at least be taken with a like. Uh, I did a piece a few years ago that took the some of all of the studies that was done on cannabis from 2020 to 2020, 2020, like
yep.
2020 from 2000 to 2020.
Okay.
And basically 95% of all of the studies
Yep.
were against cannabis, like trying to find out if there's some type of risk or
Looking for a reason
yeah,
to keep it illegal and
uh-huh.
ban it.
And
Correct.
only 5% of those were like, oh, look, we can cure certain types of cancers and it's really responding well against this type of dementia. That was only 5%. So
How
if
about
you,
epilepsy? How about seizures? How
yeah,
about all of that stuff? Crohn's
yeah,
disease. I mean,
exactly,
it's
exactly.
it and but anyway, I'm glad that we're talking about this because it just shows you have the depth of knowledge that I really respect, and you get it, which is great. And if you look even deeper into that period of time in 1930, it was a
Yeah,
year after the Great Depression. So the
yeah,
one percenters survived that. Mr.
yeah,
DuPont, Mr. Hearst, Mr. Mellon, and
yeah,
Mr. Carnegie.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
And they built the Industrial Revolution. They polluted our air. They
yeah,
created our economy.
yeah,
That's what happened here
yeah.
because they had the money to do it, and then they put this guy in place as a figurehead.
Yeah,
And
and he was the same guy that was chasing the mobsters during alcohol prohibition. He was the exact same guy.
right,
He inherited all of that. Then he's like, I don't have a job. I need to get some other drug that
yeah,
I can
to
pinpoint.
target, to
Yeah,
target, right.
yeah.
So let's get back to the premise of this article, which is why is 2026 crucial?
Well, narratives. As you mentioned, there's a lot of money that's being poured out, and there's going to be a lot of disinformation,
Hmm.
a lot of, as the president would call, fake news
Hmm.
that's going to be going out there. And so it's kind of crucial for people to get their facts straight and to know the actual true narrative. And
Hmm.
that's something that I've been doing for a long time, and uh, I'm proud to say that I've convinced many non drug users to at least be saying, hey, you know what? You're right with this thing. This doesn't work. And the fact of the matter is, prohibition doesn't work. It's never worked.
Right.
Um, it didn't even work for God in the Bible, right? He was like, don't eat that fruit. And then, what happened?
Duh.
So,
By the way, if you're a child and mom or dad tells you don't touch that stove, it's hot.
what are you
What's
going to do?
hot? What's
Yeah.
hot?
What's
You
hot?
touch the stove. You tell me not to do something,
Yeah.
and you immediately, I'm a rebel, always have been.
Yeah.
I'm going to touch the stove. Oh, that's
Yeah.
what hot means.
But it's
Oh,
also a psychological mechanism. The brain doesn't understand no. Like you can't. You need to first affirm something to be able to deny something.
right.
So when you say that's why for me, when somebody goes, "I'm anti-racist" or something like that, I'm like, "You're an idiot," because what you're doing, it's like you can't be against racism. You've got to be anti-racist, or you've got to be anti-war. I'm like, okay, well, what you're saying psychologically is I've got to be, you're first making me affirm what I should be against. So instead of saying I got to be pro peace, which is the exact same meaning, the
Mm-hmm.
difference is just that the energy flows better when you say it one way than when you say it the other.
Hmm.
So when people comes with their anti-talk or anti-drugs, what they're really doing, you got to just say no, is what they're basically
Right.
psychologically saying is just say yes.
Right.
Just keep on doing more of it.
Yeah. And
So,
it-
yeah,
it's funny how we understand human behavior like that, and the people that are making our laws to protect the public interest. What they didn't have a teenage years. They weren't rebels when they were growing up. I mean, was it all perfect for them?
I think people get caught up in their bullshit, right? Like we all believe, I think it was Robert Anton Wilson who said that belief systems equals bullshit. It's the same initials, it's
Yeah.
BS.
Yep.
So, we tend to get caught up in this role of we're a Democrat or a Republican or
Well,
we're
name calling. Yes.
this or that, and we create it, and then what we do, and I think who was a comedian, Carl, I don't remember, but
Stephen Colbert. Stephen
no,
Colbert.
no, no, it was he's dead now.
Oh,
Man, he's he's
all the
one of
more
my
reason why I
heroes.
should know him.
Yeah, he's
Was it George Carlin?
Carlin. There we go.
George
Exactly.
Carlin, the hippy dippy
Yeah,
weatherman?
yeah,
Oh my
yeah.
God, he's one of my
Yeah.
influences. Come
Yeah.
on.
But he basically said that when people make that part of their personality and somebody attacks it, now they're no longer just talking ideas, but they're attacking the person.
Right.
And so what happens here, and this is something that I've been in a couple of Twitter battles lately because like there's these blind political tribesmen that's like, yeah, we should invade this other country now and we should bomb Mexico. And I'm like, bro, I live in Mexico, so please don't bomb Mexico because like it's nice to not be bombed. Um, but basically, they're like, yeah, we can do it, and it's going to be so easy for the U.S. military to just go. I was like, first of all, Mexico's jungles are vast, and it's a huge swath of land.
Yeah.
And then you've also got a 3,000 plus kilometer border that you share directly with your country. So logistics and spillover violence and blah, blah, blah. But anyway, the point is, so people get really into this idea and they get consumed by this narrative and they believe that this is right and this is the way that's going to go. And they stop giving a shit about, killing innocent people and they stop giving a shit about like what happens to your own freedoms. And it's the same thing that happened in COVID, right? People become blind,
Right.
they get captured with this like
Mhm.
thing and they go on an autopilot. So
Right.
those leaders, a lot of them are just offline. They're just executing base programming and they're just book, 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 book. And hey, vote for this sure thing. And the money tells them what to do, and that's how it goes.
Yeah.
So
So there's one last thing I definitely want to. I mean, I could talk to you for hours. I can tell you that right now, really, and we're not going to do that. But the biggest concern, and of course, it's part of your editorial blog, whatever, um, is using the ballot initiative as a tool to undo what the citizens worked so hard to get done over the
Yes.
last 15 years of reform in the
Yes.
states.
And then they're doing it very like
They're
piece
doing it in
by
my
piece.
backyard, by the way. You
Yeah.
know, I live in Massachusetts. Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So they do it like piece by piece. They do it like little battles here, little battles there, until they have enough restrictions that they can go and put like a big restriction, like, all right, we're gonna do it. And that's how they did it originally. Like this is actually something that if you know your history with the Marijuana Tax Act, right? That there
Yep.
wasn't an outright ban of
I know.
cannabis, but it
It was
was
just
just like you need this little stamp to actually, grow
right.
it and to do it. But we'll
Right.
never give it to you. Just you need it though.
Well, I thought it was like a $500 stamp for a joint, basically. I mean,
No,
they
no, no. So what it was, the Marijuana Tax Act in itself is like you had to get like a little stamp and it was like $5. It wasn't
yeah.
that expensive. It was like very
Okay.
cheap. But what they did is like if you want to grow and sell and do that, you need these tax stamps.
Right.
And if you don't have them, you're operating illegally. And so what they did is like, sure, you got to have it, but they never released the tax stamps. Nobody could buy it. So everybody who was a hemp grower that didn't have the tax stamp was immediately an illegal grower, and that's how they got the first guys.
And one of my greatest factoids that I've learned over the years is the oldest medical schools in the country in the United States, from Harvard, Yale, NYU, and UPenn. Doctors, graduates between 1900 and 1906 from those medical schools wrote 5 million prescriptions for cannabis
Oh
between
yeah,
1900
yeah.
and
It was a part of a lot of our medicines, and they just
1906.
took it out.
And it's like it's crazy. Hey, Reggie, you do great work. It's been a
Thank
pleasure.
you.
I honest to God, I swear I could sit here and talk for hours and hours to you. And I'd like to make sure that we do this again every once in a while
100%.
because
Yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
really you have tremendous insight. You have great stories. Your depth of your knowledge is awesome. So we definitely want to bring you back at some point. But for now, I just want to say thank you for taking the time. It was great to meet you. And of course, those who are watching Cannabis Coast to Coast News, we're going to have more after this. Don't go away.
I think I messed up. Did you know there's a place that covers all the cannabis news you need? Pro Cannabis Media is now WPCM TV, your go-to website for things cannabis. WPCM TV is the CNBC of weed, bringing you the latest news you need.
Amy Carter. This week, she reports from inside the State House in Lansing.
I'm Amy Carter from Michigan Weedsters with this week's Michigan Report for Cannabis Coast to Coast News.
And talk shows about all things cannabis.
Well, thank you, and thank you for all you're doing to get the word out. Like, this show is so important.
It all started back in 2018 when Emmy award-winning talk show host Jimmy Young kicked it off with the In the Weeds podcast.
That it's not just any generic paper towel. You do have a brand that you use, right?
Yeah, we live or die by the bounty. I mean,
The quicker picker upper. I love that.
His mission? Building an army of multimedia journalists and podcast hosts who are documenting the fight to end cannabis prohibition in this country and around the world. Fast forward to today, and we've got the nation's only weekly cannabis coast-to-coast news program with Elena Pinto.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to this week's Cannabis Coast to Coast News, WPCM TV's weekly production of the fight to end cannabis prohibition in this country and around the world. I'm Elena Pinto.
Delivering the nation's only TV news-style program. Since June 2021, WPCM TV has racked up over 1.3 million views, with 17 million impressions, and picked up over 16,000 subscribers on YouTube alone. For more information, contact the team at WPCMTV.com.